What's good, friends? It's Hacks coming to you today with another Wonderlands build video. I know it's been a while since we pushed anything out on this channel. Unfortunately, that's just where we are right now with Wonderlands content. The game's getting a little stale. Things have been a little slow moving forward, but it looks like next week we'll be getting Blightcaller, so we'll have a whole new class, and that means a whole new slew of builds to try and upload so that we can put more content out. I really do appreciate the support you guys have been giving the channel and the engagement the videos are getting. I want to keep doing that. So keep an eye out moving forward for new content. Now, on that same note, wouldn't be a hacks video without a shameless self plug. I really do again appreciate the engagement the videos are getting, the support y'all are providing, both with the likes and the comments. If you do like what you see here today, please do not hesitate to hit like. If you really like what we're doing, please do not hesitate also to subscribe. That really helps me out in terms of getting the video more views, in terms of boosting the algorithm. Y'all don't know how much of a big deal that means to me. For those of y'all that have been doing that consistently, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It means a ton. Not to drag out the shameless self plug, but I also want to let y'all know that if you want to, we do have a Discord community available. Lots of cool people hanging out over that way. Really community driven group of folks. We like to do things with each other, play games. We do movie nights on Sundays. So if you want to head over that way and join our server, get access to all the save files for the builds and all that good stuff as well, there is a infinite use join link in the description of this video. Also in the description of this video, you will find a link to our Twitch channel. We stream 4 days a week over at twitch.tv/H4XZZHD. So if you want to get in on the action firsthand, you want to get some build drops, some money drops, some level lobbies, pretty much anything you want. We like to crack the game wide the fuck open over that way. So if you see us live and you want to hang out, please do not hesitate to join up with us. Now, we're here for a build, so let me shut my big mouth, and without further ado, let's dive on in. All right, friends. So as we mentioned in the intro, this is a Deadshot companion build, meaning when we look at the skill trees, we're going to be looking at Spellshot and Graveborn. We're going to start this breakdown with Spellshot, and we're going to start that particular part of the breakdown by looking at the action skill, which in this case is Ambidextrous. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say with this build, you want to be casting spells as often as possible. It is to your benefit to be throwing spells anytime you can. Now, Ambidextrous allows us to do some combo work with spells so that we can get some interesting variety and some interesting interactions, but it also allows us to be casting more spells more frequently. So it's a given for this build. I have messed around with Reaper a little bit, but I have found that Ambidextrous is the best way to go because it allows us to do more by way of spell casting. Now, as we move down this tree, you're going to notice that all of the skills we've picked up have direct interaction or correlation with our spells. That's really why we have Spellshot here. We're not going all the way down the tree. We just want to maximize on our spell casting ability and our damage, which is why we have 5 points into Spell Sniper. We've got a 60% critical hit chance with spells using 5 points in Spell Sniper. This gives us a lot of opportunity for our spells to do more damage. It's also one of the better perks in the top tier of the tree, so we went with 5 points here. We also put 5 points into Prestidigitation because reload speed is crucial. One thing I have yet to mention so far is that all of the guns that we are using in this build have reload triggered abilities, and they all scale to spell damage. So the more that we're reloading, the more that we're getting those benefits. So that 40% additional speed is great to have. Now we've got 5 into Font of Mana. I know we're not really using an action skill because of Ambi, but the 20% to spell cooldown rate helps us a lot. We want to get those spells back as quick as possible so we can keep casting them, just get them back, cast them, get them back, cast them. So we put 5 points into Font of Mana. Now, I really briefly want to touch on Glass Cannon. I don't really see the payout for this build. I've used it in others. I tested it in this build. I didn't really enjoy playing with Glass Cannon. I liked the build a lot better when I took it off. However, to each their own. This is a 30% spell damage buff. We do spend a lot of time with our ward broken and in low health anyway, so this may be helpful, in keeping that ward broken and getting the bonus from Cursed Wit, but I've decided to take it off for this build, so just note when you want to make it for yourself, if you want to put a point here, all the power to you. Now, one thing we didn't overlook is high thread count. I feel like no spell shot player overlooks high thread count. We want more spell weaving stacks. For casting spells, we're utilizing our spells. Spells are central to this build. It would be an absolute injustice to overlook high thread count for this particular setup. Now, moving over to where the meat of our skills are, we're going to talk about Graveborn, starting with Essence Drain. Again, this is a kill skill. It gives us 20% spell cooldown rate, which means we're getting our spells back faster. Now, kill skills, It's not necessarily a flat, it's a triggered bonus, but we kill a lot of enemies consistently with this build. And as we talk to our capstone here in a second, you'll see why kill skills don't really matter. This is definitely something you want to put points into. I put 2 points into this only because that's what I had to work with to get down the tree. The other 2 points are from the class mod. Now, Faithful Thralls, this is a cornerstone. All right, the more companions we have, the better. That's the easiest way to put it. More companions, better. So we're getting increased damage for having those more companions here. Now, 9% may not seem like a bunch, but when you're talking 5, 6, 7 companions at a time, that 9% adds up. And the 45% respawn rate is kind of like the icing on the cake there. So we want to put 3 points here. Now, Sanguine Sacrament, it's not necessarily pivotal to the build, but we are casting a bunch of spells, and that does give us the ability to regenerate health. And since we're constantly, in an ideal world, working with a broken ward so we can get the bonus from that, we do want to keep ourselves alive. So being able to cast those spells frequently as often as we are and maintain that health is a nice. It's a nice. All right. Now, Dart Pact, we're doing a lot of Dart Magic here. I feel like it's fairly straightforward. We do Dart Magic. We want Dart Magic to be stronger. 5 points here gives us a 20% bonus. All right. Now, along with Harvest, which is again a kill skill, but that's not as important as it may seem. We're getting our companions to deal bonus Dart Magic for a duration, and it can stack. Now, we're using a lot of companions who are doing a lot of Dart Magic, just keeping us alive. All right. So we're getting 9% per stack. All right. And it can stack twice. So that's a nice little bonus for our companions to not only be able to deal more damage, but help us out at the same time. Now we're going to jump right on down to Dark Hydra. Now, again, it's a kill skill, but for the sake of repetition, that's not as big of a deal as it may seem at first. All right, so we're getting Dark Hydra companions that are dealing Dark Magic ability damage. There's a lot going on in this build that bolsters ability damage. All right, and again, Dark Magic is nice for us. So we're getting a 60% chance every time we kill an enemy, every time we cast a spell, once we get to the capstone, right, to summon a Dark Hydra companion. Everything in this build is going to somehow, some way work to summoning a companion. So we've got it on killing an enemy, as you'll see later. We've got it on casting a spell. We've got it on reloading. There's a lot of ways to generate a lot of companions really, really quick, and all of those interactions double dip in terms of casting a spell, giving you health, etc., etc. So this is something that I feel is central to the build, along with Ascension. All right, now maximum health is nice. We want to stay alive. But the increase to spell damage is great. We've got 10 stacks here. All right, and each stack is 12% spell damage for 30 seconds. That's gnarly. There's a lot of spell damage shit going on with this build, so having an upwards of 120% for 30 seconds is sick. We've got 3 points in here by default, 3 points from our class mod. This is something I would suggest maxing out for this build. Now, because like I've mentioned before, our ward is broken a lot, we're at low health a lot. Having Lord of Edges here is a good thing because it's only 1 point. It's giving us that little touch of damage reduction so we can stay alive longer, and it's giving us 25% to damage dealt at the same time. So this is something I felt 1 point. Why not? We put 5 points into Blast Gas. Now, this is another one of those things that I think you should put all the points into that you can, because if you've seen from the introduction, some of the more crazy, like really instant boss kills is all because of Blast Gasp. All right. Now, we are dealing spell damage all of the time. So even though we're only getting a 20% chance for Blast Gasp, everything we're doing is doing spell damage. Everything, which means 20% of a lot turns out to be quite a bit. So even though we're only getting 20% chance each time because we're doing it so much, the likelihood of Blast Gas proccing is increased. We're also getting 35% ability damage in terms of all spell damage dealt. We're getting bonuses to our ability damage from other sources. The total amount of spell damage that we're doing is absurd. So Blast Gas can be a powerhouse. It can be a lifesaver in certain circumstances. You want to pick this up. Now, we've ran our mouth a lot about the capstone up until this point, so let's talk about it a little bit more here. Right, every time we cast a spell, which will sound like a broken record at this point, but we're doing all of the time. Every time we cast a spell, it's activating all of our kill skills. So all of the things we've mentioned earlier, for instance, Essence Drain, for instance, Harvest, right? All of the things we've talked about in this tree that are kill skills, every time we cast a spell, which we will do pretty much every 10 seconds, all right? is going to trigger all of our kill skills. This is a beautiful capstone for this setup. I highly recommend you pick it up. I did test this a little bit without using this capstone. I believe I had the point and glass cannon. Like this was the setup that I was switching between a point and glass cannon, no capstone, point and capstone, no glass cannon. This is entirely up to you at the end of the day, but I found running it with the point and the capstone and skipping over glass cannon entirely made the build more fun for me to play as a whole. All right. So, sweet. We've made it through the skill tree. Let's go ahead and talk about the gear. All right, friends. Now, before we get started, when you look at these weapons, I'm sure some of you are going to see some things that are familiar to you. I want to go ahead and say off of the get go, are we running not weapons? Yes. Are we running pixies? No. All right. So as we move forward, I want you to know that, yeah, you're going to see a Fear Not in here. You're going to see a Bloodshot in here, but this is not a Pixie build. At its core, this is a Hydra companion build, and we'll talk more about that as we move through these items here. Now, for our melee weapon, we're using a Snake Stick for a few reasons. One, we have a great enchantment on it on spellcast, increase ability damage by 30%. As you know, we're going to be casting spells a lot. So as we move through these items, I'm not going to touch on every enchantment. Just note that spellcast enchantments, particularly spellcast enchantments that correlate with what the build is putting out, are your friend here. Now, not only are we getting that awesome enchantment, but every melee attack we get spawns a Hydra. Now, these Hydras count differently than spell Hydras than do gun Hydras. So sometimes you're able to bypass the Hydra cap that the game has in place so you can get more companions that you should simply by diversifying the sources of Hydra generation. Now we've also got Vampire here, so if we do melee from time to time, if we get in a pinch and we need to swing around our little snake stick here, we can also get some of our health back, which is never a bad thing when you're running around with super low health and your ward constantly broken. We're using a Fragment Rain on spell cast damage dealt here. Really, because we're doing a lot of reloads, and like I mentioned before, every time you reload, you're getting an ability or a bonus that's helping out the overall structure of the build. In this case, every time I throw this weapon, it explodes on impact and turns into a Hydra. Right? Yay, Hydras. Right? So that's really the purpose of the Fragment Rain. Now, another option we have for generating Hydras is the Gloomy Fear Not here. All right, so this spell cast enchant's giving us a dark magic damage bonus, but also, again, when I throw it, it's turning into Hydras. Like I mentioned before, every time we reload, we're getting an ability. That ability is helping out the core of the build. So our reloads here are largely going to give us an opportunity to generate as many Hydras as humanly possible with the greatest consistency possible, thereby amping up our overall damage output. Now, the Bloodshot here, I do not believe, to the best of my knowledge, the Bloodshot has the ability to throw and transform into a Hydra, so this is a Pixie Bloodshot. It can be nice for certain enemies and bigger bosses to get that Pixie damage because, again, it's scaling to our spell damage. I don't use it very often, but it can be helpful against bigger bosses like raid bosses at the end of the chambers to go ahead and throw the Fragment Rain or the Fear Not a bunch, get all of your Hydras out, pop your Buffmeister, pop your fucking bloodshot on, start throwing the pixies out, and start casting spells. It can be helpful, but it's not something that I go to immediately. Generally speaking, as you saw from the introductory cinematic, I'm running the Fragment Rain or the Fear Not. Now, the Rain of Arrows here is here because of the enchantment, but also because this is just a great, like, Hail Mary trash clear sort of weapon. Like, there have been particular Chaos Chamber runs where I've been up on a bridge and there's enemies down below, or vice versa, and it's just like, I can pull this out, I can hit the trigger a couple of times, punk, punk, everything dies. It's really nice to have. It doesn't really fit the theme of the whole of the build, but I couldn't really think of a good fourth weapon to put up here. I thought about putting in a Pixie Fear Not, but I really wanted to stay away from Pixies for this build because A, we've made a Pixie build already, and B, it's overdone all over YouTube. So for that reason, we went with the Rain of Arrows. Now we're using 2 championship rings here, all right, both of which are spell damage bonuses, all right. One of them is spell crit hit damage, and the other one is spell crit hit chance. We switched it up just to get that diversity, but again, this build does sometimes struggle against higher end bosses, particularly the raid bosses. So having that boss damage bonus increase your effects overall is nice to have. It really does help in a pinch. We mentioned before we're using a Cursed Wit. Not only does our enchantment here give us bonus elemental damage, but also at the same time, we're going to be ward broken pretty much, I'd rough estimate 95% of the time you're running this build. You want to be ward broken, you want to be mid health or lower. You'll be able to keep that health constantly regenerating, which keeps you in the fray, even though your ward is broken, and having your wards depleting or ward being depleted, excuse me, is giving you 100% damage dealt. You're pretty much going to be nearby enemies most of the time, as you saw from the intro cinematic. So this is an absolute definite. I know a lot of people are using it, but it works really well for this build. We are using an Amalgam. This is where we're getting those bonus points to our skill tree perks. It is a Graveborn Spellshot Amalgam, but this one is a particularly solid god roll for this build. It's giving us companion crit chance, companion damage, spell crit chance, all damage dealt, and spell damage. Everything that we need for this build, this Amalgam packs. It's included in the save file. I can't really think of a better class mod to run here. Now we're running a Frenzied Wrath. All right, because when we kill an enemy, our companion damage is increased. Those little hydras, when you've got 6, 7, 8 of them sometimes on the screen at once, when you are able to break the hydra cap, they're dealing damage. Your little lichy buddy, he's doing damage. So bolstering that damage by 20% for 15 seconds and having it have the ability to stack up to 5 times each time you kill an enemy, this is great. We've also got a 35.1% all damage dealt up here, and of course frost damage and Graveborn. Not a bad way to go. Last but not least, all right, we're using a Buffmeister. Surprise! This particular one is on spellcast increased gun damage. I don't really care for this enchant, but they don't really stack when you have multiples on multiple pieces of gear, and I needed a spellcast enchant, so hey, why not? But this one in particular is Ka-Chow and Zap. As we all know, Buffmeisters give us that nice movement speed bonus, but this particular Buffmeister gives us an ability damage bonus as well as a spell damage bonus. So it's nice to have. We're going to be casting it quite frequently, which triggers a lot of other inner workings of the build, so we've gone with it here. And we've also thrown in an ice spike here. This is a really solid 3-charge ice spike. It's really nice to have a quick, easy cast it and forget it spell for this build. It's doing a shit ton of damage. Cast and forget. Recharge is very quick. Carries a lot of charges. I couldn't think of a better spell to put here. There are a few other options. Of course, everybody's all about the laser hand these days. Also, the Glacial Cascade's a nice choice. But having tested all of these, I decided to go with the Ice Spike. If you want to switch that up, that's on you. But yeah. Oh, shit. I completely forgot. We're going to do that without even doing a cut. I always forget to do this, and that's the hero stats. All right. So we're going to go ahead and view the hero stats here. Now, I didn't really put a whole lot into crit damage because I didn't see a need to. The damage output for this build is fine. If you want to put more points here, cool. I just didn't think it was necessary. What I did think was necessary was crit chance and spell cooldown. These two are the ones that I chose to max out because I figured that having these as high as possible would help the build achieve what it's aiming to achieve. Now, as with all things, hero points are subjective. If you want to mess around with this, that's fine. I just wanted you all to be able to see that when it comes to me running this build, I'm capitalizing on crit chance and on spell cooldown, and the remaining points that I have, we're tossing into strength for, what is that, 32.5% crit damage. Not a great amount of crit damage, not a small amount of crit damage. I think we're what, if math serves me, we're 8 points shy. 7 points? Yeah, 7 points. See, I hate math, but we're 7 points shy of capping out. It's, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could mess around with it. You could play around with it. I tried it a few different ways. I found that maxing out dexterity and intelligence was the way I wanted to go.
Alright friends, so that brings us to the end of the video. If you've made it this far, thank you so fucking much. Drumroll please, air daps to you for being awesome. Remember, there are links in the description to our Discord and to our Twitch if you want to further this conversation on those platforms. And remember that I really, really appreciate your interaction with this video. Your engagement means the world to me. If you want to stay in touch with what we do, remember you can like, you can subscribe, completely optional, but really does help us out a lot. Helps us out a lot. Yeah, let's go with that. All right, so I'll stop wasting your time now. Enjoy the rest of your YouTube browsing. I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.